What's up, guys? Before we begin, we're on to the second round of G Fuel Madness, where my code is 30% off all orders until we're knocked out. But what we're really gunning for is our own espresso shaker cup if we win this whole thing. If you want to help out in the competition, using code espresso on any order at gfuel.com, big or small, starter pack or multi-tub restock, helps towards our goal. The link's in the description below if you guys are interested, and only if you want to, but thanks a ton in advance if you do take part. Just like the changing tides, weapons and their power rankings change, and surprisingly, they've changed relatively fast since our last discussion of weapons in Modern Warfare just a few weeks back. Naturally, with all the adjustments made, some stated, some behind the scenes, and stealth updates, I wanted to share with you my updated list of the top 10 weapons, expanding upon the previously mentioned top 5, like we discussed last month. And as with what we discussed last month, a lot of the weapons, there's some that are definitely head and shoulders above the rest, like the M4 in most scenarios, and then there are times when there's a bunch of weapons that are grouped really close together, where their exact ranking kind of depends situationally where you find yourself in that exact moment, what could be better suited for a closer long-range engagement and things like that. But I want to share with you guys this list today, but as we go along, let me know your thoughts. What are your top 5 weapons in Modern Warfare? Or if you want to go the extra mile, what's your top 10? Does it more or less follow what we discussed here in this video? Maybe it deviates a little bit. Feel free to let me know whatever your thoughts are down below, and as well, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare, especially as we're eagerly awaiting a major update. But that said, let's jump into it. As with the other times we've talked about power rankings, let's just get these out of the way since they're kind of default. The M4 and MP5 are definitely still, in my opinion, the best weapons in the game. The M4A1 we've talked about is the jack of all trades weapons. You could pick it up as a brand new player, or you could be a seasoned veteran with 10 plus years of experience shredding under your belt, and you'd still likely go positive at the very least. It's applicable in just about every situation imaginable: close quarters, medium and long range, thanks to the damage, fire rate, recoil properties, magazine capacity, mobility, ADS times, you name it. It doesn't necessarily stand head and shoulders above the rest in smaller areas of focus like those previously named, and that's what makes it so formidable. It's great, but it's not the best, so it doesn't sacrifice any extremes, whereas say the Odin has a fantastic damage profile, but has a very slow fire rate comparable to other ARs as a result of that high damage profile. It's a direct trade-off. In literally almost every area, the gun has great competitive stats, and thus it makes it, in my mind, a no-brainer for the rifle category. Same thing goes for the MP5, like actually exactly the same. It's got some properties that are absolutely killer comparative to SMGs alone, but when you also factor in some of the other factors like the damage and range profiles with the 10mm rounds and the mobility, among other things, it can rival even rifles, and all with it, once again, making it the jack of all trades SMGs, which makes it incredibly versatile and an incredibly deadly weapon. But we all knew this. That's really no surprise. That's your 1 and 2 here with this. The power rankings, though, really start to shake up after this, where we can take a look at these other weapons. Following those two, we talked about the last power rankings video, the Growl 556, and I do still think this holds the number 3 spot, even amidst some of the shakeups that, personally, things like number 4 also make a strong case for it, but we'll get to number 4 in just a second. But the Growl at number 3, to me, it's a ripper of a weapon. It's lightweight and as a result has some pretty solid mobility, it's got an awesome damage range, and truthfully, it rivals the M4 in plenty of areas directly. Statistically speaking, pending no shadow adjustments or stealth adjustments, the Growl is just slightly behind the M4 still, but at the same time, it really is so close that it comes down to personal preference. And also, if you don't want to use the M4 because you've used it for so long already, this is another very valid option. I'd highly recommend ranking up your battle pass to unlock it and then getting the attachments to kit it out, because even though it's a solid weapon at its base, it's even better once you kit it out with attachments to go along with it. This thing handles incredibly well in just about every engagement, as the M4 does, close quarters or long range, so definitely recommend trying this one out if you guys haven't done so already. But next up, number 4 is the big one that I think is perhaps even the catalyst for why I want to revisit this list as a whole. This being a newer addition to the list, we've talked about it in the past before, but it's dropped off and now made its way back in, that being the AK-47. Now with the last update 1.15, 2 weeks ago now almost at this point, there were changes listed, but they actually weren't enacted until just this past Tuesday, where they were reiterated in patch notes. The changes made, though, were specific to the magazine and ammo conversion kit of the 545 by 39mm rounds. This was said to increase the close and mid-range damage profiles for the specific attachment in play, which already naturally, according to the game, increases fire rate and recoil control at the expense of some damage and some range. But what does that really do? How does that translate in-game? Well, beforehand, the damage profiles at the base were 26 to 22 at close quarters to range. Then the chest was 31 to 26, and the head was 42 to 35. You also have the headshot multipliers in there as well, but after the change, we saw those numbers switched drastically. After the update at base, it was 34 to 22 at range. The chest was a 40 to 26 damage drop off, and the head was a 55 to 35 damage per shot spread. But that may not serve any significant explanation to you if you don't know anything to compare it by. This greatly reduces the time to kill with this conversion kit and subsequently decreases the amount of shots it takes to kill. This takes it from a 4-shot kill to a 3-shot, and if you hit 2 headshots, this has the potential for a 2-shot kill. That's a huge buff compared to where it was before, and what's brilliant is that this makes it such a more formidable close quarters and mid-range weapon. The AK has some properties that were solid before, but it wouldn't have been my first choice, and just even the rifle category, let alone entire weapon armory in close quarters engagements, but now this thing will cut through enemies like a warm knife in butter. So far since this change, I've been running this as one of my primary ARs, and I've been absolutely loving this thing with the 39mm magazines. It's completely changed the dynamic for the weapon for me, and for that, I would highly recommend trying it out if you haven't already. And who knows, maybe you'll absolutely annihilate with this thing. I felt like Superman when I was using it. Now, truth be told, going into number 5 here and then through 10, this is where we start to kind of go into those, they start to get bundled together, and therefore situationally, the rankings may differ. I may on one map think one is better than the other. I may in a close quarters gunfight think one's better than a longer range engagement. So this is where you'll start to see them all kind of bundled. But that said, next I want to talk about the Bison. This has been one of my favorite weapons as of recently within Modern Warfare. Just the beauty of having that much ammo, that much mobility, and I think for an SMG with that much potential to just hold down a trigger, the recoil compensation is pretty solid as well. There's a lot of times where you can kit it out and it has 0 recoil, even if you do hold down that trigger for quite some time. And whenever there is some, it's relatively easy to control with that right thumbstick. But the mobility is the biggest thing here with me. It allows me to get in and out. It's my primary rushing weapon, and for that, you may have seen a lot of gameplay here up on the channel as of recently with it already. But mobility, that monolithic suppressor, and the ammo capacity, beautiful stuff. Next, I want to jump back to another rifle, that being the M13, one that in recent times has had a few buffs, but not necessarily in the most immediate past. But the fire rate makes this nice for close quarters engagements. You can kit it out so that there's minimal recoil, and though it doesn't have the best damage properties, if you can hit those shots, the time to kill is pretty dang fast. At range though, I'm not entirely sure if I would take this as one of my first or second or maybe even third choice of rifles, but again, suited more so for close quarters play because of that fire rate and other properties that go along with it. Moving though into the next weapon I want to talk about, that dealing a little bit with the Odin. We referenced it previously here in this list just by comparison because it is one of those weapons that has the extremes. It is a weapon that has a very high damage profile, and thus with some attachments and previously with stopping power, you could make it even, I think at one point, a one-shot kill weapon. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that. That's a just top of my head recollection, but it is something that the damage profile is quite high, so therefore you're going to have a decrease in a fire rate as a trade-off. But everything else with this, if you can play a little slower, that's always been my thing with the Odin, is it isn't your run and gun rifle. It's a weapon that you stick to the outside, the perimeter a little bit, maybe you go up the middle, but you're already anticipating a fight because the ADS time on this thing also isn't that great unless you completely kit it out with ADS attachments, which detracts a little bit from other aspects you want to capitalize on as well. But the Odin's damage profile is absolutely worth a try out, and still I think solidifies it in the top 10 positioning. After that, we'll jump over to some SMGs, that being the MP7 firstly. Again, this one super fast. If you kit it out properly, it is the fastest ADS time of any weapon within this game, and therefore as a run and gun player, it's a fantastic option here in my books. Just from a personal preference side, I think that I'd still take the MP5 or the Bison, but the MP7 I think is definitively that number 3 SMG for me at least. I absolutely love the rate of fire. I love the ammo capacity if you end up kitting it out with a different magazine, and I love, of course, that mobility that it offers as well. So definitely a huge asset if you ask me. Try it out. But that brings me to the final SMG that I want to talk about today, and that's one that has actually made its way into the top 10. This being the Uzi. Now, before you call me crazy, this is still a very, again, situational weapon. I really wouldn't take it over the MP5, the MP7, the Bison, but it got a significant buff with the brand new attachments, or I guess relatively new now since it's a week and a half old at this point. But the new 41 AE caliber conversion kit in the magazine section of your attachments had some updates to the damage, but the biggest part is the fact that the range on this is now incredible. It's out to the point where marksman rifles don't one-shot players, and you can still get a 3-shot with the SMGs. So I remember a couple of days ago I was streaming and I absolutely got sniped by somebody with the Uzi, and I was just was blown away at the time to kill and how quickly I died. Little did I know though at the time on update day that it got severely changed. So it's definitely a more formidable weapon than it was before. Is it one that I would absolutely rush out to use? Still probably not, but it definitely has made its way up and jumped in the power rankings quite a bit. Then the final weapon I want to talk about is that of the Ram 7 to close off this top 10. It's been a weapon that's been kind of up and down in our power rankings, and with the recent adjustments, it's kind of been kicked towards to what I would consider not necessarily the outside looking in, but kind of on the bottom half of the top 10. So like we talked about, they get bundled up, but this weapon's fantastic with the recoil control. The fire rate's not too bad. I personally would probably equip an ammo magazine so that you have some extended mags here for that, but that's my own personal preference. But it's a formidable weapon in a lot of situations and a lot of engagements. It's fantastic for what it is, but again, comparing it to the M4, to the AK with the new conversion kit, to the Grau 5.56 or the M13, to me, it just isn't the top of the line AR, but it's still much better than a lot of the other weapons, hence why we're closing out here with it in the top 10. So that said, that's where we're gonna wrap it up, and I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. Once again, do you agree or disagree with this list? Is it more or less what you would say is your top 10 as well? And if it's not, feel free to let me know your top 5 or top 10 in the comments below. But hopefully enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff we got you covered here on the channel. So if any of that interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.